Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be looking at chapter 17 of Job. So I'm just going to read as usual and stop when I think I have something to share or comments to make about the verse. So, my spirit is broken, my days are extinguished, the grave is ready for me. So this is Job speaking. Are not mockers with me, and does not my eyes dwell in their provocation? So in other words, he's seeing people around him. I don't think people are being nice to Job in this situation. Carrying on from verse 3, he says, now put down a pledge for me with yourself. Who is he who will shake my hand or shake hands with me? I think he may not have meant it just literally. Well, don't forget that at this stage he was already unwell, and from the Bible, the way the Bible describes it, it's as if he had skin irritation, he had boil all over him, so nobody would likely want to touch him. So this may be literal. I think it's actually more literal. I also think that, when you talk about shaking hands with somebody, you have to be intimate and in close proximity with them. So I can look at it in another way, in the sense of figurative. In other words, I can't see anybody that would have been associating with Job, because I certainly know from all the way he's been writing, he's been speaking, that he felt very much alone. So he didn't have much interaction with people as well. And that can be very heartbroken. It can really make him to feel bad about all that is happening. Nobody to encourage him in that really bad situation he is. So verse 4, it says, for you have ridden their hearts from understanding. Therefore, you will not exalt them. So in other words, I think it looks as if he's putting, because don't forget that these conversations are between Job and his friends. So my understanding from here is that he was saying to the people or to his friends that you haven't helped the situation. The way you're treating me is not making people to be close to me anymore. It's not making people to come forward and to be of support to me, because from everything, don't forget that people around will be seeing his interaction with these so-called friends that came to see him, and they may be taking their clue from there. And so he's accusing them, accusing his friends. Now in verse 5, he said, he who speaks flattery to his friends, even the eyes of his children will fail. When I read this verse, I thought, I've seen a lot of cases of places in scripture where people curse. This is a curse that he's, pronouncing upon somebody or upon his friend. And I thought, wow, he who speaks flattery to his friend, even the eyes of his children will fail. Job was in a really bad position for him to have said this. And I'm not sure what to say about this, statement here is rendered. But if you have a comment, you can let me know about it. What do you think? Now in verse 6, he said, but he has made me a byword of the people, and I have become one in whose faith men spit. Well, I think he's referring to God, that God has put him in this position, somebody of no importance, to be somebody that people, would not pay any attention to, or at the very least, the way they acknowledge him would be of something negative, not as important. Don't forget that Job had been somebody prominent, very prominent in his neighborhood or possibly his town. So the position he is now is very far removed from what he used to position he was before all of this. So he's certainly, tongues would have been wagging about what happened to him. How come he's now in this kind of position? Now in verse 7, he said, my eyes has also grown dim because of sorrow, and all my members are like shadows. So we can understand that he's gone through a lot, and he's just describing how his state is at the moment. Verse 8, he said, upright men are astonished at this, and the innocent stir himself up against the hypocrites. There are two things I want to bring out from here. Number one, I've marked in my Bible where it says upright men. So in other words, what he's talking about, upright men here, is that they would be shocked. I think I'm seeing it in two ways, that they would be shocked at his state. And I think another understanding I'm getting from the conversations Job has been having with his friend is that the general belief then was that if you're good, and working right with God, all will be well with you. And so this is one of the things that is probably making Job's friend to come with him with serious argument that he must have done something wrong for him to be in this position, because they believe that if you're right with God, all will be well with you. And so he's saying here that upright men are astonished at this, possibly astonished about what is the state he is now, because everybody would have, I imagine, believed that Job was a righteous man before all of this situation came. And the innocent stir up himself against the hypocrite. So the other part of it is that the other side of what I'm thinking here is that the upright man meant somebody that knows God and understand God would have been thinking that what about hypocrites? And the hypocrite stands himself up against the innocent stands himself up against the hypocrite. Are his friends the innocent ones? Is Job the hypocrite, or is it vice versa? I think more than anything I would think that Job is saying that he is the innocent one and his friends are the hypocrites. Let me know what you think about this. Now in verse 9 he said, yet the righteous will hold on to his ways, and he who has clean hands will be stronger and stronger. So I think Job certainly sees himself as righteous and upright, and so he's saying that irrespective of what you say, guys, I know that I haven't done anything wrong. I'm right with God. I'm going to hold on to my guns and not bow to your doctrine or whatever you are bringing up against me, that I must have done something for this to have befallen me. And he's going to continue to trust in God and, hold on to what he believes. So in verse 10, he says, but please come back again, all of you, for I shall not find one wise among you. I'm not quite sure what wisdom is talking about here, but I would agree with him that wisdom about God, with regards to the knowledge of the things of God, they have proven to me, I don't know about what you think, but they have proven to me that they know very little of God. And so in that wise, I would agree with Job that they're not wise. So he's asking them, come for another round. I'm ready for you. Verse 10, my days are past, my purposes are broken off, even the thoughts of my heart. They change the night into day. The light is near, they say, in the face of darkness. So what Job is talking about here is about himself, the way I think in some chapters before now, I've seen that there are times that he gets confused, because don't forget that he's asking God, he's speaking to God as well. Sometimes he's speaking to God, sometimes he's speaking to his friend, but it changes between who he's speaking to, or when he's addressing the person that is talking to him, or sometimes he's addressing God. And I think that he does get confused because he's not sure. I'm not sure God has spoken to him, because certainly we've seen him challenging God, and I feel he doesn't have an assurance that God is with him, and he wants a justification from God. So he is quite confused, and who wouldn't be in that situation? So we really cannot be like Job's friend and try to say, why is he speaking to God like that? Because we're not in his shoes. We don't know how painful or how much he would not be able to process what those things that happened to him. And this is another thing that is just occurring to me now as I'm talking, that the number one, we know the extent and the scale of what happened to him, but the other part of it is that it happens in quick succession, such that he was not able to even process the first calamity that befell him. Then the next one came, and then the next one. So I understand that it would take him, maybe not for the rest of his life, to be able to process that. And when he sounds confused sometimes, I think that is just him reacting to the situation that he finds himself. What do you think? So in verse 13, he said, if I wait for the grave as my house, if I make my bed in darkness, if I say to corruption, you are my father, and to the worm, you are my mother and my sister, When then is my hope? Where then is my hope? Now, see, he's now turning. It's now, as if he's got hope coming. Because in what he's starting to talk about in verse 15 is that, where then is my hope if he thinks that, oh, let me just die and my flesh decay and everything is forgotten about me and I would just be like the dust, go back to the dust. And he was asking himself, where is my hope? I think this is a good thing. And this is what I was saying before, that sometimes you see him in a very upbeat position, at some other times he's low. It's looking like he's thinking upwards now, because he said, where then is my hope? As for my hope, who can see it? Nobody can see it. It's only in him. Will they go down to the gates of Sheol? Shall we have rest together in the dust? So in other words, he's questioning that, there's no point for me to be down, because if I'm down, it's no use for the grave. And this is one of the things I like about the scriptures, because we have examples of real life situations in the scriptures. So look at Job here. His reaction to the situation that happened to him has not been dressed at all in any way. We don't have a summary of his life to say that, oh, Job, he had so much, he was the wealthiest man in his community, and then he lost everything. And then at the end of it, he gained it back, because we know that that's what's going to happen in the end. We are given insight into the process he went through, his ups and his downs, the confused state, the interrogation he went through with his friends, his, when he was questioning God. All of those things we have written in the scriptures, which is giving us a true picture of somebody's life. And this is the best way, one of the best ways to learn, looking at people's experiences and relating it. Look at how they came out of it, how they dealt with it, and that can help us to really learn about life. And we have so many things like that in the scriptures. And that's one of the reasons why I like studying the scriptures, because it's just not fiction. It's real. The people you have in the scriptures are real. We know their names, we know their ages, we know about their families, we know about the real things that happen to them, the good, the bad, the ugly, as well as the victories, the challenges, the successes they have. And so we find those relatable experiences in the scriptures and we can learn from it. And so if you're not very much into studying or reading the scriptures, I would challenge you to make sure that you don't leave any part of the scriptures unread, unturned, any page unturned, because we're treasures in this germ, in this, in this resource that the Lord has given to us. And let us spend time exploring it. I hope this video has been really useful to you. If so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also turn on your notification button so you can receive an alert when a new video is being released. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, also, I would like you to share it with your friends and families so that you can be blessed, so that they can be blessed with what you are enjoying from reading these scriptures with me. So we've looked at chapter 17 today. That means next time, in the next episode, we're going to be looking at chapter 18. So God bless. So if you're getting value from this, can you please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification button so you can receive an alert when a new video is being released.